Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and I'm back with another one. I appreciate you guys for tapping into yet another Akem'S analysis. I got a great video for you guys today, episode number 75 of Akem'S analysis. We're going to be talking about some of the more pivotal games in the Big Sky Conference in 2025. Got about 16 games listed on there. We're going to talk about why they are pivotal and how they pertain to the whole makeup of the 2025 season. So we'll get into that. We are going to be talking about, obviously, Sac State and their denial of their waiver. We started to talk about it last week, but the official denial hadn't happened, so we'll get into that a little bit. Southern Utah and Utah Tech are going to be joining the Big Sky Conference in 2026, bringing the total to 13 with the subtraction of Sac State. We'll get into all of that. 12-game seasons at the FCS level have been regular season games. 12 regular season games have been approved at the FCS level, so we'll get into that. The Big Sky Commissioner has become the College Commissioners has become the Vice President of the College Commissioners Association. We'll talk about that. Texas State gets a Pac-12 invite. Maybe Sac State a little bit upset about that. And then we have some teams opt into the House settlement out of the Missouri Valley, so we'll get into that as well. I appreciate you guys for tapping into the channel. We are getting closer and closer to football season. Please make sure you guys hit the like. Please make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Please make sure you guys leave me a comment down below. We're getting into the thick of the season. Things are getting tight. Media days are coming up, and things are going to get exciting. We're going to have some games to break down in about 10 to 11 weeks. So there's exciting things happening in college football. I'm excited to get into all of it. Make sure you guys leave me a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe. We will get straight into it. Okay, we are getting into some of the more pivotal games, most pivotal games for the Big Sky in 2025. We're going to go like week by week. So we're starting at week 0 and we'll go all the way down to week 13. And we'll talk about some of the more important games in the Big Sky in those weeks throughout the season. So first things first, week 0. I don't know if we have a ton of week 0 games in the Big Sky Conference, but week 0 for UC Davis, we have UC Davis at Mercer, 2 playoff teams last year. Mercer, I believe, was a top 10 seed. I believe they were top 8. They might have been the 8th seed. Mercer, if I'm not mistaken, they were the 8th seed. And then we got UC Davis. UC Davis, I believe, was the 5th seed. They played a quarterfinal date at South Dakota. I believe UC Davis was that 5th seed. But UC Davis at Mercer, we all know Miles Hastings is gone. Lan Larison is gone. I believe they lost a receiver. They returned Batu, but they lost a receiver, Chaz Davis, and then I think they lost another piece of. They lost Trent Tompkins. They also lost. I'm blanking on their last receiver's name. But they lost a couple of receivers. They lost their running back. They lost their quarterback. So offensively is the question for me at UC Davis. How will they be able to move the ball? How will that G scheme be able to get the run game going? Who's going to be quarterback? Who's going to be throwing the ball? So I'm excited to watch that game. I'll probably do a breakdown on the UC Davis Mercer game if I can. That's one of the rare few week 0 games that the Big Sky has this year, and UC Davis is playing in it. 2 playoff teams from 2024, so that'll be an exciting game. They're going down to Mercer. I think Mercer's in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can correct me in the comments. But UC Davis at Mercer, week 0. That's a pivotal game, one, because it's 2 playoff teams, but also with UC Davis having all the changes that they had this past offseason, not even a bunch of changes like they had a bunch of transfer guys, but they did lose a lot of talent, mainly their quarterback and running back. So we'll get into how that is going to affect them going forward this year, and that game will be a big judge for that. So be on the lookout for a breakdown of that game. My water. No water. At number 2, we got Sac State at South Dakota State. I'm actually going to take this top off and drink a little bit. At number 2, we got Sac State at South Dakota State. I think this is a big date, obviously, because Sac State, their president, kind of made their bed. Now the players and Coach Marion are going to have to lay in it and live up to what he said, because they called the FCS JV. Whatever he was trying to make, the point he was trying to make, we get it. It's a lower level than the FBS. I understand that, but you did call it JV, which is kind of a spit in the face when you haven't been super successful at the JV. So I will most definitely be breaking down this Sac State SDSU game in week 1. I just want to see, Sac State has gained a ton of talent throughout this offseason. Brendan Marion has done a ton of work at Sac State to put in that go-go offense. They've been hitting the recruiting trail very, very hard. I think their team is going to be very good. How do they mesh together? Talent-wise, I think they're going to be very good. But obviously, the product on the field has to match with the talent, and we will see if that's the case. SDSU, as we all know, they lost Jimmy Rogers. They lost Mark Gronowski. They lost the receiver Griffin Wilde. They lost some defensive pieces as well. I mean, they had, I think when I looked at it early in the offseason, it was like 18 players that transferred from South Dakota State and went to Washington State with Coach Jimmy Rogers. So, South Dakota State is in flux. Obviously, they got a new head coach. I believe they got new coordinators as well, if I'm not mistaken. I know they got a ton of new talent on their squad. Some of their players, a lot of their players have left. So, obviously, they've been a staple in the FCS the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years. We'll see if they're able to return to that level of dominance that they've had the last few years. Definitely defensively, their dominance was apparent. We'll see what they're able to do. Sac State, SDSU, that's probably one of the early big-time games in the FCS. If I had to choose one, that would be one of the games that I would mark on my calendar. You guys should be on the lookout for that. But Sac State at SDSU, exciting game. Okay, number 3, we have SDSU at Montana State. Obviously, Montana State played in the Natty last year. They lost to North Dakota State. South Dakota State has been up there as well. I believe when South Dakota State won their first ring in 2022, they beat Montana State in the semifinals. So exciting day there for South Dakota State and Montana State. Obviously, this game, so they get Sac State at home, South Dakota State does, and then they go on the road the next week in week 2 to play Montana State in Bozeman. So that's a good game for Montana State to get at home. I'm excited to see, obviously, same thing we just mentioned with South Dakota State. We can say the same thing about Montana State. Brody Grebe, O'Reilly, McCade O'Reilly. You got Tommy Malott, obviously. Ty McCullough. Rohan Jones transferred out. They've lost a lot of talent as well. Scottrey Humphrey is gone as well. So a lot of talent leaving this Montana State squad, particularly Tommy Malott. South Dakota State also lost a lot of talent. I don't know. This would be, I think, based on how South Dakota State does against Sac State, that's going to give us a lot of good ideas of what we should expect out of them against Montana State. But also, Montana State's got to play week 1 as well, so we'll see what they're able to do. I can't remember who they have week 1. They might have Mercyhurst or Utah Tech or somebody, but it's not a strong team in that week 1 for Montana State, so they should be able to work some of the key. Or actually, I think Montana State opens the season with Oregon, so very strong team to start the season for Montana State. That won't be a good, unless they're able to beat them, that won't be a huge judge of character for Montana State. I think we're going to have to wait until this South Dakota State date to judge how good they are. The culture seems to be getting set in at Montana State, and the culture is set in at South Dakota State. The culture has been set at Montana State as well. So hopefully that's able to carry over into these new, this new era of some of these schools without their staple quarterbacks and Mark Gronowski and Tommy Malott. So we will see week 2 South Dakota State at Montana State in week 2. Another week 2 date we have is St. Thomas at Idaho. Now I know you may be thinking, St. Thomas, is that a Pioneer League team you just mentioned as a game to watch for? It is. Now, why did I mention St. Thomas? First off, I am somebody who has believed that St. Thomas has been on the up and up. Now, they weren't as up and up as I thought they would, because I would have honestly I think I did choose them to win the Pioneer in 2024. They did not do that. Drake won the Pioneer again. But I think back to Eastern Washington in 2024. I think it was week 2 or week 3. They went to overtime with Drake and lost. Obviously, the Pioneer League champions. Eastern Washington was not a good Big Sky team in 2024. But St. Thomas at Idaho, I think that could give us I think that'll be a good game. I think it could be an exciting game. Obviously, Idaho's working with a new regime as well. They lost a lot of pieces also. They lost their quarterback, Jack Lane. He transferred. They lost their running back, Deshaun Buchanan. He transferred. They lost Jordan Dwyer. They lost Mark Hamper. All are transfers. Tommy McCormick graduated. They had some more pieces on defense, some of their D-line, which was elite. Keyshawn James Newby transferred out. Dallas Alfalava, I can't remember his last name. He transferred out. They had another piece transfer out, but they've lost a lot of talent. Andrew Marshall also transferred out at cornerback. So they've lost a lot of pieces. They brought in their new coach Ford. And, I'm excited to see what they're able to do. I think St. Thomas has been on the up and up. They have a lot of money. They're a private school, but I think they can do some things against Idaho. But if Idaho's able to blow them out, I think that gives us a good idea of where Idaho sits at as well. So, I really put this game on there because I remember that Eastern Washington game in 2024 against Drake. I thought Eastern Washington was going to be a better team than they were. Ended up going to overtime, losing in overtime to Drake. So a game to watch for in week 2. 2 games in week 2 to watch for. Number 5, we have NAU at Southern Utah in week 3. So Southern Utah is obviously going to be joining the Big Sky in 2026 after this year. Them and Utah Tech. We'll get into that a little later. But NAU was a playoff team in 2024. Southern Utah was a fringe playoff team. They were 7-5. I think if they get to 8-4. If they get to 8-4, I believe Southern Utah is a playoff team in 2024. That UAC was really, really good. They had an elite running back at Southern Utah in 2024. How are they able to carry that over? Are they going to be able to carry that over? Or are they going to be a shell of themselves? I think that could be a good early test for NAU at Southern Utah. This is a Southern Utah team that took UC Davis down to the wire in 2024 early on in the season. It was like week 2 or 3. They had them on the ropes. Their quarterback at Southern Utah ended up throwing an interception late. That really ended their hopes of winning that game. But, given that Southern Utah is coming back to the conference, given that they're a above average, they finished 4th in the UAC last year, United Athletic Conference. Given that they're above average UAC team, I say we give them an opportunity to see if they can see what that game at NAU's against NAU is going to be. NAU is going to Southern Utah for that game. Both play at elevation, so shouldn't be a huge adjustment for them. But that's an early week 3 date for NAU and Southern Utah. In number 6, in week 4, we have Incarnate Word versus Northern Arizona. Incarnate Word is going to Northern Arizona. I believe they played last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe, I know, no, they played Northern Colorado last year. But Incarnate Word at NAU. I'm excited about that game. Incarnate Word, I believe, was a 6th seed last year. NAU was not a seeded team. They were like the last. I think NAU was actually the last team into the playoffs, and they laid an egg against ACU on the road. They didn't put up any points. It was a 24-0 victory for ACU. They went on to play North Dakota State and lose to North Dakota State. But I think that's an exciting game for Incarnate Word in Northern Arizona. Another early test for Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona is returning a decent amount of talent. Outside of Alex McLaughlin, their star safety, I don't think they lost a ton of talent. They lost a receiver, also a younger receiver. Maybe not a younger receiver, but they lost a receiver. But they haven't lost a ton of talent outside of that. They retained their quarterback, which is the biggest piece. They retained their running back, Seth Cromwell, which is a big piece as well. Brzee White, their tight end, who was All-American, first-team All-American tight end, is gone. But outside of those two, a few of those pieces, I think NAU will have a decent squad in 2025. So Incarnate Word, NAU, week 4, an early date for a couple of early dates for NAU that I think you should have your eyes on for the 2025 season. At number 7, we got Idaho at Montana. Obviously, we know what this is. Rivalry game. They're playing for the Little Brown Stein. I believe this is a game that should be played every year. Unfortunately, it's not. But Idaho is going back to Montana early on in the season in week 5. That is a big-time game in the Big Sky Conference. I think that could have some big Sky Championship implications early on in the season. Now, I'm not somebody who is putting Idaho in Big Sky Championship talks right now. I think they're going to be above average this year. I don't think they're going to have a great season. I don't see a lot of talent on the Idaho squad right now. I don't foresee them being super, super good. I hope Coach Ford and the Idaho Vandals are able to shock me. But Idaho at Montana in week 5, I think that's a big-time date. I think that's a big-time game. Obviously, it's a trophy game, so that's a game to watch for week 5. That'll probably be the game of the week in the Big Sky if I know the Big Sky well enough. And number 8, in week 6, we have Montana State at NAU. 2 playoff teams. Basically, any playoff matchup was probably on here. Montana State at NAU, 2 playoff teams from 2024. I think NAU, I know I said this last year. But just based on what I'm seeing in the makeup of the conference and based on what I'm seeing from some of the talent in the conference, I think NAU could be a dark horse to win the Big Sky in 2025. I know I said that before the 2024 season. They were a dark horse. They weren't a dark horse to win it, but they did have a pretty decent record in the Big Sky, and they did make the playoffs. So, I wasn't all the way right, but I was on the right track. They were a better team. They played really, really good defense. And that's what really led them was their defense. We'll see if their defense is able to travel this year. They get that Montana State team at home in week 6, but, it's going to be exciting. It is going to be exciting. So, mid-season date for Montana State and NAU in week 6. Probably going to be a game to watch. Definitely a game to watch when the season gets here. And number 9, we got NAU at UC Davis in week 7. NAU at UC Davis in week 7. So, NAU is on here quite a bit. NAU's on here week 3, week 4. They're on here for their week 6 date. They're on here for their week 7 date. They're on here for week 10. I mean, NAU's got quite a few games that, you want to keep your eye on because they were a playoff team in 2024. They were one of the better squads. They're somebody I think we should keep our eyes on and be locked in on to see what they're able to put together for 2025. NAU at UC Davis in week 7. Question marks for UC Davis. I got a lot of question marks for UC Davis. I don't know what to expect from this squad. They've lost a lot of talent. We'll see how they're able to play with losing all of that talent. But NAU goes on the road to Davis, California to play that game in week 7. And it's going to be an exciting date. At number 10, Montana at Sac State. So Montana is returning back to Sacramento to play the Hornets in week 9. Later date in the season. Sac State, obviously, we talked about the talent they brought in. We've talked ad nauseum about Montana, this roster, the quarterback situation, Jake Jensen, Kale Ayat, who will it be? They got pieces. Both squads have, Sac State, I think, is a little bit more talented of a roster than what I think they have at Montana right now. But obviously Montana has the winning pedigree. They've been the staple in the Big Sky for, last 20 to 30 years. They've been one of the staples in the Big Sky Conference. So, but that doesn't mean anything. History doesn't mean anything. So, they get that game. Sac State gets that game at home in Sacramento against Montana. That is a game that Montana should be not worrisome about. You never want to worry about an opponent. But that is a game that, I think Montana could bump their head on. Depending on where they are at in the season at this point. This is week 9 at this point. Depending on where they're going to be at in the season, that could be a game that could potentially make or break Montana's season at the week 9 point. You got to think also with that in mind, they will still have to play Montana State 3-4 weeks later after that. So a date that is very, very important for Montana and Sac State. I think Sac State will still be eligible for the Big Sky title this year. I believe they will still be eligible for the FCS playoffs this year. Their FBS waiver got denied, so they should be still in line to make the playoffs. They still should be in line to win the Big Sky. So that could be a make or break game for either squad in week 9, depending on where they're sitting. But very, very important game right there in week 9 against Montana at Sac State. At number 11, we got week 10, Idaho at NAU. Once again, NAU playoff team in 2024. Idaho is going to the elevation in Flagstaff, Arizona, and we will see what Idaho is able to do. Obviously, I think there's more question marks about Idaho currently than there are about NAU. The quarterback situation is up in the air. They got Joshua Woods at Idaho, unless he transferred away. I don't think he transferred away. They got Joshua Woods. They got Jack Wagner. I believe they have Nick Yosefek still there as well. So they have a few quarterbacks who will be the starter. I predict, if I had to guess, I'd say it'd probably be Joshua Woods. They didn't bring him from Fresno State for nothing. But also, obviously, he's transferring from Fresno State for a reason. Jack Wagner does have some time under his belt. How successful was that time in 2024? I don't know if we could put a finger on it. But Idaho at NAU, week 10. Another game that could potentially make or break somebody's season. Obviously, any week could make or break somebody's season. You could lose to anybody. I mean, Montana last year lost to Weber State. That was completely unforgivable. The defense had laid an egg in that game and gave up 55 points. So, I mean, anybody could lose on any given week, and any week could end up being do or die. But these are games where logically, based on where the season ended last year, based on where teams were last year, based on where talent and everything was last year, you can foresee where teams could run into some issues with some of these teams. Number 12, we got UC Davis at Idaho. And here's the thing. When you look at UC Davis's schedule, they have a tough end to the season. When you look at Idaho's schedule, they have an interesting end to the season. And then Montana State has an interesting end to the season too. You'll see this in these last dates. But week 11, you got UC Davis at Idaho. Question marks for both of those teams. And I don't know if either of those teams will be in the running for the Big Sky Championship at that point in the season, but that is definitely a date. Two names, when you see them across from each other, your eyes light up. I don't think UC Davis played Idaho last year, and I can't even think about the last time UC Davis played Idaho, but I'm excited to see them play against each other. We haven't seen them play, at least in the last year. We didn't see them play against each other, so a game that I'll be excited to see who is able to come out victorious. If I had to pick now who I think would win that game, I would honestly say Idaho. No, I wouldn't actually. I would say UC Davis. And I'm basing that off of talent, solely off talent. I think of the Connors brothers at UC Davis. I think of Batu on the offensive end at UC Davis at receiver. Outside of that, I haven't done a huge deep dive on UC Davis and Idaho's rosters. But I would pick UC Davis based on some of the things that I see. They have a Goligoski on the D-line also at UC Davis, another player to watch for this year. So, but obviously the game is going to be played in Week 11. That's another date to be watching for. Number 13, Idaho at Sac State in Week 12. So, I mean, just look at this alone. Week 10, 11, 12. Idaho's got NAU in Week 10 at NAU. They get UC Davis at home in Week 11, and then they go on the road to Sac State in Week 12. So, Idaho has it's no easy thing to be good at Idaho this year, because mind you, they got Montana also, and I think Idaho, when I did my strength of schedule, I could find my strength of schedule in here somewhere, but when I did my strength of schedule breakdown, I think Idaho was at the top, so I think they got one of the toughest strength of schedules in the Big Sky this year, so good luck to them. Idaho at Sac State. Sac State, I would pick Sac State to that game. They get that at home again. But also, we mentioned how Week 9 would be a make-or-break week for Sac State potentially. We'll see where they're at in Week 12 when they get Idaho. But another big date for Sac State. And then, mind you, Sac State still has I don't know what their game is called at UC Davis and Sac State. But it's not the marker. That's NDSU, South Dakota State. Can't remember what Sac State's and UC Davis's game is called. But they got that game in Week 13. So Sac State's got an interesting end to the season as well. But Week 12, you got Idaho at Sac State. Number 14, we got UC Davis at Montana State. Another big date. Montana State went on the road and won that game this past year in 2024 by 2. UC Davis went for 2, was intercepted by Mikado O'Reilly, and then, they ran the clock. Well, actually, I think they tried to onside it after that. They didn't get it, and then Montana State won the game that way. But that was an exciting game. Montana State had control of the game virtually the whole game, and then UC Davis tried to mount a comeback and just came up a little bit short. But UC Davis at Montana State. Montana State gets that game at home. We will see. That'll be a late test for both teams, depending on where teams sit. I think it could be make or break for Montana State. I don't know necessarily if it will be make or break for UC Davis. I don't foresee necessarily UC Davis winning the conference this year. I just think they're losing a lot of talent. I think if they do win the conference, I think it'll have to be led by their defense. I think they'll be playing a lot of low-scoring games, holding teams to a low score total, low yardage total, low passing and rushing yards. I think that'll be how UC Davis will win games this year, just because they've been so heavily powered by their offense. They lose some big pieces on that offense, mainly the quarterback and Land Larison. I'm not going to keep talking about it, but you guys know what it means to lose talent. Obviously, you recruit for a reason. You hit the transfer portal for a reason. I don't know how hard UC Davis is hitting the transfer portal. I don't see a ton of names go across the social media feed saying that UC Davis, such and such, is transferring to UC Davis. I see that for their neighbors in Sac State, but I don't see that for UC Davis a lot. But we will see. Number 15, we got Sac State at UC Davis in Week 13. Obviously, that's their rivalry game. That game is going to be played at Davis, so not a huge bus trip for either school. But Sac State at UC Davis, we'll see what that game means. That could, most of the times with these games late in the season when they're rivalry games, those mean playoff implications, whether you're going to get a high seed or you're going to drop down in seeding because of that game. Who knows? But last but not least, at number 16, we got Montana State at Montana. Obviously, the Brawl of the Wild, Week 13, that usually always has playoff implications. Sometimes it has Big Sky Championship implications on it as well. Last year, Montana could have ruined Montana State's season. Well, not even ruined it, because they still would have won the conference, but they would have shared it with UC Davis. In 2024, the game was played. In 2023, the game was played for who was going to win the Big Sky Championship. I hope we get a scenario like that again this year, where both teams are, 7-1 or 6-1 going in that game. Whoever wins that game is going to win the championship, or maybe even 7-0 going to that game. We'll see. But always an exciting game when it's a rivalry. So Week 13, Montana State at Montana and Sac State at UC Davis. Those are two games you most definitely will have your eyes on. So those are some of the pivotal games in the Big Sky for 2025. If you guys think there's one I missed, let me know down below. But I think I really covered most of the games that would hold a lot of playoff implications, a lot of Big Sky implications. Obviously, there could be some surprises this year, like, does Eastern Washington get on a heater this year? Maybe. Does Idaho State potentially get on a heater? Maybe. But based on some of the history in the conference, I think you're starting to understand some of the teams who win and who do not win in the Big Sky Conference. I think Weber State is the one that you think of when you think of somebody who could potentially flip the script, but I think a lot of that was heavily weighted on Jay Hill, the former head coach at Weber State. He's no longer there. They have not been the same team since he's been gone. So we will see. We will see. But let me know what you guys think about some of those pivotal games in the Big Sky Conference. Some of those early non-conference dates are big for me. Sac State at SDSU and South Dakota State at Montana State. Those are two big games for me. I'm very excited about those. But you guys let me know what you guys think about that down below, and I will move on. Okay, we talked about this briefly. We didn't go into it too much, but Matt Brown, at Matt Brown EP, reports that both Utah Tech and Southern Utah are joining the Big Sky Conference per Skyline Sports. So, Southern Utah, Utah Tech coming to the Big Sky Conference. I think the writing was kind of on the wall with this with Utah Tech. Utah Tech has been playing a lot of Big Sky teams in their non-conference schedule. The Big Sky teams have been beating up on them a lot. They were 1-11 in 2024, 1-7 in conference play in 2024. So Utah Tech has been not very good. They made their full transition to Division I FCS last year, so they were playoff eligible, playing a full FCS schedule, all the works. They were fully transitioned. Both schools will be joining as full-time members. Southern Utah in 2024 was 7-5, 6-2 in conference play. They were a bubble team, I believe. They were one of the first four out, if I'm not mistaken. They could have been in the playoffs in 2025. I think if they win one more game, maybe if they beat UC Davis early on in the season, and they get an 8-4 record, they're definitely in the playoffs. I think they're definitely in over NAU also, because I think NAU was 8-4 and they got in. I believe they got in over Southern Utah, was one of the teams they got in over. They finished fourth in the United Athletic Conference. They won the Big Sky in 2015. They left the conference in 2021. They are now returning in 2026. Both teams they'll be full-time members, so that means all of their sports will be playing in the Big Sky Conference. I think regionally, this makes a lot of sense for the Big Sky Conference. It's easy travel for a lot of the teams that already make up the Big Sky Conference. Also for them, they're playing in the UAC previously, so that's a lot of travel to Texas, a lot of travel to the South. When you play in the Big Sky Conference, you're staying primarily in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, California. That's where the conference is playing at in the northwest of the country. So Southern Utah's returning. I'm excited about that. Utah Tech, I don't know. One thing I put on here, are these holdovers until Montana State, and UC Davis potentially leave the conference? As you know, UC Davis has already joined the Mountain West. All of their other sports have already joined the Mountain West Conference. Football is the only one maintaining in the Big Sky. And, UC Davis, if I'm not mistaken, gets the right to first refusal when the Mountain West goes to add another team. I think they get the opportunity to decide if they want to deny or accept an invitation first before they add anybody else. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's part of the setup. I could get some clarity on that. But, UC Davis has the ability to potentially move up to the Mountain West in the next 5 to 10 years with all of their other sports being in the Mountain West. So I think that's something that the Big Sky Conference and a lot of their admin are probably thinking about right now is like, okay, we are in the Mountain, we have UC Davis, we have Montana, we have Montana State, but obviously with all this conference realignment, there's been a ton of talk about Montana State, potentially some of the other teams, maybe like an Idaho, moving up to the FBS, maybe going, building their own conference, maybe joining the Mountain West. We don't know. We don't know where it's going to go. But I think part of this move, obviously they haven't said this, but I think part of this move is looking ahead to the future, making sure that they can still maintain a competitive conference, maintain, big numbers in their conference. My question would be, why did Southern Utah leave in 2021 and why are they now coming back? Was it a competition thing? Was it, they weren't they won the conference in 2015, so it's hard to say that they weren't competitive, but were they not as competitive as they would like and wanted to be more competitive in another conference? They did finish fourth in the UAC this last year. That's not first or second, but, they're up there better than, most of the teams. But if I'm not mistaken, the UAC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they had 9 teams in 2024, and they finished, above average, so they finished fourth. So I guess they're one of the better teams. They actually technically tied for second in the conference because they were 6-2. Now, obviously, the other teams like Eastern Kentucky and Tarleton State had better non-conference schedules than them. So Tarleton State finished at 10-4, Eastern Kentucky finished at 8-5, and then Southern Utah 7-5. So more wins for both of those teams, but in conference play they were very equal. So I mean, Southern Utah had been competitive in the UAC. I'm not sure 100% why they would leave, but obviously they know, and the Big Sky knows why they're adding them. So Utah Tech, Southern Utah will be joining the conference. Do these additions add or subtract from the current Big Sky competitive balance? I saw a lot of talk online. There's mixed reviews, I think. Honestly, I don't even think there's mixed reviews. I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand the additions of Southern Utah and Utah Tech. I mean, from a competitiveness standpoint, you have a school in Utah Tech who was 1-11 in 2024. We already have one of those in the Big Sky Conference. It's Northern Colorado. So now we're adding two teams who are not very good. They don't recruit very well. They don't have a ton of talent. They're not being very competitive. They're most likely out of games in the first half. I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense why you would add these schools. Now, for Southern Utah, I kind of get it. Southern Utah is not a bad squad. They make the conference competitive. Now, if you just want a top-heavy conference, then say that. But if you want a conference where there's going to be competition from top to bottom, I think adding Southern Utah adds to that. I'm probably in the minority in that, but I see value in that Southern Utah addition. Now, do I think they needed to add Southern Utah and Utah Tech both? Not necessarily, but I get it. They're both out of Utah. Add another Utah school. That makes it now 3 Utah schools in the Big Sky Conference: Weber State, Southern Utah, and Utah Tech. So outside of California, that's the state with the most Big Sky Conference schools. Because you got Cal Poly, UC Davis, and Sac State out of California. And actually, Sac State's going to be, as they've said, leaving next year. So that will be the state with the most Big Sky Conference schools. But do I get the Utah Tech edition? Not necessarily. They're not very competitive. They're just new to D1 FCS. Regionally, I get it, but outside of the regional implications, I don't really understand it. But Southern Utah, I get that. I don't think so. I'm of the belief that Southern Utah should have never left the conference. I thought things were fine with them in there. Were they very competitive? Not necessarily, but they had talent. They had a guy who transferred out, went FBS. He was at Liberty last time I checked, but he was a good player, was all conference. They've been putting talent out at Southern Utah, so it's not like they've been inept. But I don't know. We'll see how they're able to do. Obviously, this isn't coming until 2026, but it's big-time news in the Big Sky Conference, so we are going to talk about it. You guys let me know what you guys think about it. Are you guys of the belief that adding Southern Utah and Utah Tech doesn't do anything for the Big Sky Conference? Or are you guys of the belief that, this may be a change that is anticipating more change coming down the line? You guys let me know down below, and I will move on. Okay, we got a quick hitter right here. FCS football game 12 regular season schedule approved by NCAA beginning in 2026 per USA Today. So, obviously a lot of the FCS schools are playing 12 game seasons this year. A lot of them played 12 game seasons last year. I don't necessarily know why that is, like why some years some schools did play 12, but most years they only played 11. And I don't know why historically they haven't played 12, because it makes a lot of sense for them to all play 12. This gives them more revenue opportunities, more home game opportunities, more ability to get a bigger sample size of your team with another game on the schedule. Maybe you can add another, non-conference FCS, competitive FCS game, or, you can add another money game through FBS. I mean, it gives a lot of schools more flexibility to be able to make more revenue with adding maybe another revenue game. Maybe add to your playoff resume by adding another non-conference FCS game. I don't know. I just think this is a good possibility for these FCS schools, and I'm surprised why it hasn't been done in the past. But it's been approved. 2026, hopefully all schools will be playing 12. I don't know. I mean, I wonder what the minimum amount you have to play, because obviously you can play 12. Does that mean you have to play 12? Or does that mean every year you now can schedule 12 games? I don't know, but I think it's exciting. You guys let me know down below what you guys think about the 12-game season. And I will move on. Okay. Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill to serve as Vice President of the Collegiate Commissioners Association. So I think the Collegiate Commissioners Association goes hand in hand with the new College Sports Commission. I think they're kind of going to be one of the governing bodies, or one of the voting governing bodies of the new College Sports Commission. Athletic Coast Conference Commissioner Jim Phillips will serve as president of the College Commissioners Association, while Big Sky Conference Commissioner Tom Wistrcill was approved as the organization's vice president. The CCA announced at the conclusion of the annual June meeting. It's an honor to serve as president of the CC. I don't think this might be, but I don't know if this is in association with the College Sports Commission. It's an honor to serve as president of the CCA and support important work that's being done by our commissioners group across the country. I'm so sorry. Give me just a second. A commissioners group across the country, Wistrcill said, "This is a pivotal time for college athletics, and the collaboration amongst conferences has never been more essential. I look forward to working alongside my colleagues to help shape meaningful progress for the future of our student athletes and institutions." Wistrcill will succeed Phillips as president at the end of his 2-year term. So this is very exciting. I don't necessarily know what all the implications of Tom Wistrcill becoming the becoming the VP of the College Commissioners Association. Let me just look it up. College Commissioners Association. Oh, they got one for every. Okay. There's one for the NAI as well. So I think this is something that's been a thing. I just read the release from the Big Sky Conference, and it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. There's not too much on what the College Commissioners Association is. What is the College Commissioners Association? The College Commissioners Association is an organization comprised of commissioners of various athletic conferences and college sports. It serves as a leadership group and a communication channel for discussing issues, policies, and regulations that impact intercollegiate athletics, particularly with Division I and Division II. The CCA also works with the NCAA to represent the interests of its member conferences and institutions. So basically, these are the commissioners of all the conferences in college sports for college athletics, and they work in hand with the NCAA. I guess this is probably going to have to do with the College Sports Commission as well. If I understand what's happening in college sports, the College Sports Commission is going to have something to do with the Collegiate Commissioners Association. It's exciting, Tom Wistrcill getting a voice, becoming vice president, eventually going to be president. That's exciting news. You guys let me know what you guys think about this. You guys let me know if you think this has any implications for any of the FCS or if it's just, news to talk about. You guys let me know down below, and I will move on. Okay, we are going to be talking about Sacramento State. I saved it for a little bit towards the middle of the video. We talked about them a lot in the beginning of the video last week. I just wanted to get into it right now. So Sacramento State has hired attorney Jeffrey Kessler to represent them as they pursue legal avenues to become an FBS independent school after a waiver request was denied this week. Kessler confirms to CBS Sports. Kessler was a lead attorney for plaintiffs in the House v. NCAA. This is all per Brandon Marcello. So as we all know, Sacramento State is looking to go FCS. Sacramento State is looking to go FCS. Is looking to go FBS. Excuse me. I'm doing all this stuff. Sacramento State is looking to go FBS. That is their plan. That has been their plan all offseason. That has been what they have been shooting for all this year. They've talked about it a lot. Their president has talked about it a lot. They have not been shy about mentioning that they would like to be in the FBS. Their waiver got denied. The FBS Oversight Committee recommended that waiver be denied by the D1 Council, and it was denied. Well, where do they go from here? Well, what it looks like they're going to have to do now is sue college football, sue the NCAA, sue whoever is in their way from getting into getting FBS. And a lot of people what I'm seeing online is they're going to win. I don't think there's any... They're legally, I don't think the NCAA can tell them they can't be FBS if they have all the means to be FBS. The only thing they don't have is an invite, and that was one thing that the D1 Council and the FBS Oversight Committee both leaned on as to why they were denying that waiver. Sac State does not have an invite. That is the main thing you look for an FCS school to get into the FBS, because if that wasn't the case, a lot of FCS schools would probably have moved up already. A lot of people want to go to the FBS level. A lot of people would rather play bowls. I don't know. It's interesting, but... That's what's happening. That's what's happening to these schools. So we will see what they're able to do. Sorry, my mouse. I just accidentally turned off my mouse, so I'm actually going to have to reconnect the magic mouse. I actually had a hair, too, in the mouse, so it wasn't moving as fluidly. I don't know if you guys have Apple mouses, but, that's what I deal with, man. Sacramento State refuses to back down. So this is an article from PFSN, Pro Football Network. Sacramento State refuses to back down after NCAA rejection accelerates bold FBS move for 2026. So one thing that we have to get into. Once Sac State's waiver had gotten denied, they announced that, it was announced, I think the day after or a couple days after, that they were going to be moving to the Big West. All of their sports outside of football are then going to the Big West in 2026. Football, it was reported, was going to be going FCS independent. But Dr. Luke Wood is very persistent. They are very steadfast on wanting to go FBS, and they are looking to do whatever it takes to go FBS. So now he still mentioned in his statement, he dropped a statement, and I don't think I put the statement in here, but he dropped a statement basically saying the push still remains the same. We're still looking to go FBS. We're still making our push. Expect Sac State to be FBS in 2026. Well, there's only a few paths currently that they can use to get there. Their waiver has been denied. They don't have a conference invite, which is kind of interesting because Texas State just got a conference invite. So, it's kind of crazy that Sac State's been lobbying for this Pac-12 or Mountain West invite all offseason, and then Pac-12 just goes and says, sorry, you're not ready. Texas State, they're definitely ready. So interesting there. The college football offseason has been a whirlwind. One of the stories this offseason has been flown under the radar is Sacramento State's attempt to move up from FCS level to FBS. Out of nowhere, they have built up some of the best NIL funding in the country. The NCAA recently denied the program's waiver to join FBS, but according to one analyst, the Hornets are not giving up. After NCAA setbacks, Sacramento State doubles down on FBS ambitions. Sacramento State is not historically a good football program. Ouch. Last season, the Hornets went 3-9 at the FCS level in the Big Sky Conference. Now, I don't want to say, I guess historically, if you look at their, and that's another thing, unfortunately, about Sac State is outside of 2019, 2022, 2020, or 2020, was it 2018, 2019, 2021, or 2019, 2021, 2022? They definitely won in 2019 and 2021, so I think it's 2019, 2021, and 2022. In there, they won 3 straight Big Sky Conference championships, but I think outside of those seasons, Sac State has not been very good. I mean, they got their first victory in Washington Grizzly Stadium in 2021. So, I mean, they're not wrong. It just hits a little hard when you say it like that. Last season, the Hornets went 3-9 at the FCS level in the Big Sky Conference. Despite their struggles on the field, the program is committed to moving up to FBS level. And in October, raised $35 million in NIL funding to help their case. I think that should say in committed NIL funding. They hope to join the Pac-12 conference by 2026. In a recent interview with 365 Sports, the Athletics' Stuart Mandel explained how the university is going all in on trying to become an FBS school.
Interesting stories to me coming out of all the craziness of the last 4 years of college football is a team that honestly I had never heard of. And then I recently found out that their most famous alum is Tom Hanks. So then all of a sudden they've decided they're going to try to money whip their way into power college football, into the FBS. And it just feels out of nowhere. Was it out of nowhere, or was it just because they weren't very popular? None of us knew about them.
It is out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I live in the Bay Area, about a couple hours away. Sacramento State has never really entered the conversation. They did make the playoffs a few times recently. Before Troy Taylor got hired by Stanford, he led a little bit of a resurrection. They made the playoffs a couple times. But that was the first time. They'd made the playoffs. And then they went back to 3-9 last year. Basketball, they have about as bad a history as you can get. Men's basketball has never been to the NCAA tournament. And then all of a sudden, about a year ago, there was this community effort, a bunch of people deciding, hey, we're going to go all in on this, and raising a lot of money. And most importantly, the president of the university has just decided that, this is his number one priority, getting Sacramento State athletics into FBS, into the big time. This is a school that made $100,000 in media revenue last year that now is talking about bringing in millions. I went there the other day, and it's about as modest as you would expect in terms of facilities and the offices and whatnot. And yet Jaden Rashada is there. Everybody remembers Jaden Rashada. Top 100, a receiver from Mississippi who took officials to LSU and Ole Miss, was there visiting last weekend. They're like a hot program on social media amongst all the, recruits in the country. And so, one of the reasons I wanted to go is that when I initially started hearing about this stuff, it was easy to just kind of blow it off, but they're not giving up. And as you saw this week, they got their application, or they needed a waiver to move up to FBS because they don't have a conference invite. That waiver was denied. And then the president immediately went on Twitter and said, we're still going to do it. We're still going to get in some way or somehow. So it's got a little bit of a when Dion went to Jackson State kind of element to it.
So that's somebody who's local to Sacramento State, giving his thoughts about the potential transition from FCS to FBS. And, that's kind of the sentiment. And that's kind of the point that a lot of people have made is, outside of the recent history with football and, the 2019, 2021, 2022 years, they haven't been super, super successful at the FCS, and they haven't made deep playoff runs. They've been to the quarterfinals. Thank you for the person who put that in the comments. I appreciate you a lot. They've made it to the quarterfinals, but they haven't made it past then. They haven't made it to the semifinals. They haven't made a national championship. They haven't won a national championship. They've won Big Sky Conference championships, which Sir Mr. Mandel didn't mention that when he was talking, but that's not the point he was really trying to make. The point he was trying to make is like from a standpoint of being like massively successful. You see Southern Sam Houston State a couple of years ago. They won the Big Sky, the FCS in 2020, and they've been historically pretty successful at the FCS. But they got a national championship a couple of years later. They were transitioned just like that. I think that's kind of the push that a lot of people look for. Now, granted, I think Sam Houston State had a Conference USA invite or a Sun Belt invite. I can't remember. I think they're Conference USA, but I believe they had an invite, so they were able to move up that way. But I don't know. Just the longer this conversation with Sacramento State goes on, the longer it feels like there needs to be another like middle division. Like, there needs to be 3 divisions of college football. There needs to be the lower level of college football. Then there needs to be the FCS. And then I think there needs to be the FBS, Power 5s. But I think, there needs to be that G5 FBS level. I think, Montana States, South Dakota States, North Dakota States, Idaho's, some of the upper tier FCS schools, some of the lower tier FBS schools are in that level. And then I think like the Boise States, some of the schools out of the Mountain West, like maybe a UNLV, some of those schools move up and go to the Power 5 and play maybe a Pac-12, or maybe the Mountain West in general moves up and then there's another subdivision. I don't know, but Sac State is still making their push. That's the main point about this. Dr. Luke Wood is not giving up on his FBS push. He wants to be an FBS institution. He wants to play big-time college football. He wants to get out of the JV. So I hope they're able to dominate JV football this year. That's my main thing. Dominate JV football this year. Get out and, do what you want to do once you get out. But in the meantime, don't poo-poo all over the FCS. Don't poo-poo all over the good football that's played out here. Along with this topic, I mentioned it earlier, there's another round of the conference realignment merry-go-round in the coming days. This is per Brett McMurphy. Texas State is leaving the Sun Belt, going to the Pac-12. Louisiana Tech is leaving Conference USA for the Sun Belt. And the Conference USA is likely to remain at 10 schools in 2026. But the significance of that is Texas State leapfrogging Sac State. They probably were already in front of the line for them, but Texas State is going to the Pac-12. It kind of makes you feel bad for Sac State due to all the work they've been doing this offseason and throughout the last year to get FBS, and then you just see Texas State not even make a push like them, just play their games, play their schedule. Their admin are probably doing work behind the scenes, but you don't hear about it. I think that's the big thing. You don't hear about it. But they did the work behind the scenes. Next thing you know, they're going to be in the Pac-12 where Sac State was hoping to be slotted at. But, Sac State's not going to give up. They're going to keep working, and we will see if they're able to be in the Pac-12 in the coming years, or even if they're able to be FBS independent in the coming years. But I think the main thing Sac State needs to focus on is win every single game by 1,000 this year. That will let the FBS know that, hey, we are ready. And that's really the question. That's really the answer for Sac State. Forget the invite right now. Go play a Big Sky schedule, dominate the Big Sky. Go play the playoffs, dominate the playoffs. I think, I said this last year, I mean this year as well. The FCS is more open than it's ever been. If you can truly put together a winning squad, if you can truly get a squad that meshes together, gels together, and I think this is the year for Sac State to do it. You have all this talent. They're locked in. You guys are opted in. That means your squad, if they want to get their money, whatever money you guys have committed, whatever money you guys have promised them, whatever NIL contracts, rev share contracts they've signed, you guys are opted in, which means for your players to get their full money, they have to be here at the start of the season, and they have to finish the season at your school. Now, I don't know if they're going to stay past the spring transfer portal window or even the winter transfer portal window. But I think for the most part, you have your roster right now, unless those guys don't give a damn about any of that money and they're willing to enter the transfer portal right now. But also, I don't know how many of those guys have a redshirt year left. I don't know how many years they can waste with I don't know if any of these guys have COVID years. These guys are probably post-COVID guys. So, you have a squad right now. You have the talent right now. You need to use that talent to show them. And you've already lost a few recruits. I saw last night they lost a recruit. A couple of days ago they lost another recruit. So it's not like guys are just sitting on their butts. But some of the recruits for the 2026 class are already jumping ship going to other places. So you guys need to do what you can do right now in 2025 to win every single game by 50 points. Go to the playoffs, win every single playoff game by 50 points. Win a national championship. That says everything you need to say to the FBS without even saying a word. Go win on the field, go dominate, go win a natty, and then all the talk is done. And I think if you want to do it, this year is the year to do it. I think the Big Sky is a little down talent-wise. The FCS is majorly down with talent. Everybody's leaving the FCS to go FBS. I mean, it's all about coaching. I mean, coaching really shines in the FCS these days because it's not just all talent. Obviously, there's talent at all levels of the Division I football. Obviously, there's talent all over the FCS. But I think coaches shine a little bit brighter at the FCS right now just because the level of talent is not as high as it's been historically. So now you have to have good coaching. You have to have good schematics. You got to be able to beat that coach on the other side of the field. I mean, that is what it comes down to at FCS football right now. And if Brennan Marion and their staff at Sac State can do that, I think they can make a big push this year. I've been somebody who's been talking good about the way, obviously, they've done all the talking they've done this offseason, but with the product on the field, I believe Sac State can have a good product on the field. I just talked about some of my games to watch. Sac State was littered all through my games to watch for the 2025 season. So I think very highly of Sac State. I want them to be good, and I want them to focus on the game on the field this year. So let's see what they do this year, and then that'll do the talking for you. Go win 12, 13, 14 games this year. Go make a deep playoff push. That's going to tell the FBS everything they need to know. Just do that. So you guys let me know what you guys think about that down below, and I will move on. Okay, we talked about South Dakota opting into the House settlement last week. Actually, I think that might have been 2 weeks ago. South Dakota said they were going to be opting in. South Dakota State is officially opting in, as well as North Dakota is officially opting in as well. So that leaves North Dakota State, the last school out of the Dakotas not to opt in. You got SDSU, you got USD, and you got UND. All opted in. We're waiting on North Dakota State. South Dakota State released a statement, and I got a little excerpt from their statement. Recent changes to the settlement allow a one-time opportunity for institutions to grandfather in members of a team rosters, allowing current student athletes an opportunity to remain on their respective teams for the remainder of their eligibility. In addition, the settlement offers Jackrabbit Athletics a variety of ways to increase funds to assist student athletes in performing at a high level academically and athletically. After a thorough review with our university regarding the recent changes made to the House settlement terms, we feel this is the right time to opt in, Sell said. That must be their athletic director. We have been fortunate to have tremendous academic and athletic success over the last decade, and this move positions us well for today and in the future. I am extremely excited to have the opportunity to provide additional resources to enhance our student athletes' experience. Yes! Yes! North Dakota. Today we set the NCAA our intent to opt into the House settlement, said Chavez. As an NCAA Division I member in a non-defendant conference, our thought process has always been to do what is best for our student athletes and the University of North Dakota. With the information that we have today and the requirement to make a decision by Monday, June 30, we felt that it was the most prudent course of action. There was always a chance that when the final settlement occurred that it could be different than what was initially provided by both plaintiffs and defendants, attorneys, and sure enough, that was the case. Given that roster grandfathering can only occur should institutions opt in at this moment of time, we believe that opting in is best for UND, continued Chavez. Additionally, I believe the opportunity to expand our partnerships with our teammates at the UND Alumni Association and Foundation, 1883 Collective, and Ralph Egelstad Arena will provide us the best situation possible for our student athletes this year and beyond. Further, the ability to potentially provide additional support through internal NIL will be intriguing for UND as we traverse this new era of college athletics. So basically, reading both statements from South Dakota State and North Dakota State, it kind of seems like the grandfathering of roster spots was really, really huge. And if you've listened to what Kent Haslam has said about opting into the House settlement, that's been another thing that he's touted as something that matters to him. You got to think about the roster limits. You no longer have scholarship limits, and previously it's been 63 number of scholarships, which is still maintaining in the Big Sky Conference. But for certain, 105 is a number that's below what they already have. I believe basketball men's and women's basketball is going to be 15, maybe 20. I believe soccer is around 20. I mean, when you think about some of the roster limits that they're setting, the roster numbers, a lot of these schools are over that number. So a lot of kids would be losing opportunities. But I think as it stands right now, you get to grandfather in those scholarships at this time. So with that in mind, I think a lot of these schools are trying to get in, grandfather those roster spots in so those kids can finish their eligibility. Once they're gone, you do have to be under the 105 number. But at the time being, anybody who puts you over the 105 number can be grandfathered in until their eligibility runs out. So I think that's a big thing. These ADs wanted to protect their student athletes at all costs. So they did that with not opting in. But now the time is now to opt in and be able to maintain those roster numbers. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's the most important to a lot of these ADs. A lot of these schools care about that stuff. So exciting change for SDSU and UND. Now there's 3 out of the 4. A lot of the Missouri Valley is opted in. They didn't opt in as a conference, but a lot of their institutions are opted into the House settlement. So we will see what they are able to do with that. SDSU opted in. North Dakota opted in. Now South Dakota is also opted in. North Dakota State, you are on the clock. I believe if we were to see them opt in, we would see it happen either today or tomorrow. This will be before either Sunday or Monday. I don't know when the cutoff for June 30th is. I don't know if it has to be by midnight or by 11:59 on June 29th, or if you can do it until the end of the day on June 30th. But I think if it is the end of the day on Monday, we would see a lot of schools opt in. We should have seen a lot of schools opt in yesterday because this will be dropping on Tuesday. Obviously, this is Sunday. I'm back on my regular schedule. But I think we'll see a lot of teams opted in. We should have seen a lot of teams opt in yesterday. If that is truly the last day to opt in, we will see. They might have moved it back to July 1st, though. I know there's been a lot of ebbs and flows with when that day was going to be. A lot of people were saying July 1st. A lot of people June 30th. I think it may be June 30th, the last day you can opt in, and July 1 is you have to have it by June 30th, 11:59. So we will see what that looks like. But you guys let me know in the comments what you guys think about South Dakota State opting in. What do you guys think about North Dakota opting in? What do you guys think it'll do for the FCS? What do you guys think it'll do for the Missouri Valley? Do you guys think it'll help those schools, hurt those schools? You guys let me know down below, and I will move on. Okay, I want to thank you guys for tapping into Akem'S analysis this week. It's been amazing. 75 videos. I've done 75 episodes of Akem'S analysis. I thank you guys all for supporting my channel. I thank you guys all for showing me love. I thank you guys all for just tapping in with me week in and week out. It's always great talking about college football, college athletics with you guys. And yeah, tell a friend about me. Get your friends to subscribe to the channel. Send my videos to one of your friends, one of your associates, somebody who wants to tap into FCS football, somebody who wants to tap into Big Sky, Montana State football. Let them know. Come watch my channel. I'm breaking down the games. I'm breaking down the players. I'm talking about it all the time. So make sure they plug in with me. Yeah. A lot of good things going on. Next week, I will have a video for you guys. The week after that is my wedding week, so it'll be a very, very busy week for me. I'm not going to shoot a video that week. I will take the week off, spend some time with my fiance, and just relax. I'm not going to shoot that week, but I will be back for you guys following the week of the 12th, so the weekend of the 19th, the week of the 19th, that is when I'll be back. Actually, the 13th, so that'll be 7 days. The 20th, the week of the 20th, I will be back shooting for you guys. So yeah, next week will be my last video, and then I'll take a week off, and then I'll be back the week of the 20th. But I want to thank you guys for tapping in. Please hit the like, please hit the subscribe button. Please leave me a comment down below. Please give me all your thoughts. Whatever you guys think about FCS football, whatever you guys think about these topics, I'd love to see what you guys got to say. So let me hear it down below. But I thank you guys so much for tapping in. Please hit that subscribe button if you're watching this channel. 60-70% of the people who watch my videos do not subscribe to my channel, and I really, really would appreciate you guys subscribing. We're over 1,800 subscribers. Let's see if we can get to 2,000 subscribers before the season starts. It's gonna be a tall task. Got to get 200 more subscribers, but I know we can do it. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. I appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys next week. See you later.